Below the phrase generator are 7 additional patch modules: the patch, the auxiliary envelope 1 and 2, the effect module, and LFOs 1 through 4. In this chapter, we will discuss the patch and effect sections. The patch module offers a number of controls that affect how the patch will be played. The voice mode selection field determines if a patch plays polyphony or not. Polyphony occurs when more than one note is played at a time. When mono is selected, you can only hear a note at a time, and notes are re-triggered whenever you play legato. With the legato setting, it's pretty much the same with the exception that notes are not re-triggered. The 5 subsequent options are arpeggio settings. You can easily create an arpeggio with notes going up, going down, going up then back down, going in the order you played these notes or in any random order. The resolution at which the arpeggio plays the notes is determined by the arpeggio resolution knob, and the values appear in this field as you turn the knob. In other words, the arpeggio will play the notes in the order defined in the voice mode field and at the speed defined by the arpeggio resolution knob. The Voices field sets the maximum number of polyphonic voices attributed to this patch. With greater numbers also comes greater processing time. If you want to reduce the load on your computer, set the number of voices to a lower setting. Remember that this applies to a single patch. So if you're using a 4-patch combi, while the number of voices is set to 32, you effectively need to use up to 128 voices before Xphraze starts applying voice stealing algorithms. In most cases, setting the voice number to 16 will be adequate and will leave more resources for other modules. When Xphraze is in mono or legato mode, the priority field lets you pick which note gets played. For example, setting one patch to poly and a second to legato, with the priority set to high lets you double the highest note. When you play a chord progression, the first patch plays the chord, while the second only reproduces the highest voice in the progression. By default, the sustain pedal function is active, which means that whenever you press the sustain pedal connected to the keyboard, Xphraze will sustain the notes. However, disabling it will prevent the sustain pedal to affect the sounds in this patch. Disabling the sustain pedal function is a very convenient feature when you don't want certain patches in your combi to hold, while others do. The MIDI channel buttons let you assign a patch to one of 4 different MIDI channels. In other words, Xphraze can not only play 4 different patches simultaneously in a combi, but each patch can be assigned to its own MIDI channel to play different parts if needed. The active MIDI channel is always the bright one, and a small LED displays incoming MIDI events next to the appropriate MIDI channel. The velocity curve lets you determine how the patch will respond to note velocity. By default, the velocity curve is actually linear, which implies that velocities at the output of Xphraze are the same as they were at the input. However, moving the center handle by dragging it up will make Xphraze switch to a higher velocity response more quickly. The velocity curve works best when associated with the velocity range. The velocity range lets you determine the response range for the patch. By setting the velocity response range and the velocity response curve, you can control exactly how and when the patch will respond to the notes you play, according to the velocity value of these notes. For example, you can create a combi that plays certain patches only when you play hard on the keyboard. To change the velocity range, drag the start or end velocity range points to the desired location. The range values will appear in this field. Use the Unison knob to create wider and denser patches. The Unison knob affects the amount of detuning and panning it applies between each voice in a patch. By default, the Unison knob is set to 0 or off. The key range can be edited the same way as the velocity range. In this case, you can set a specific range for the patch, effectively allowing you to create split keyboards with some patches playing over a certain range and others covering another range. The pitch bend range lets you determine how to handle the pitch bend MIDI controller data it receives. The pitch bend low and pitch bend high can be set independently. The maximum range in both directions is plus or minus 24 semitones or 2 octaves. The last set of parameters in the patch module lets you control the portamento when in mono or legato mode. The portamento time determines how long it takes for a note to glide to the subsequent note. When the sync button is enabled, the portamento time is displayed as a quantized value and will be synced with the current project's tempo. Once enabled, the effects section adds a selectable effect from the effect type list. The mix control knob determines how much of the effect you want to add to the patch. Each effect type offers its own set of parameters that you can control through the same 3 knobs. For example, selecting a comb filter effect gives you control over the filter's depth, its speed, and its center frequency, while the stereo delay offers a left and a right delay time and a feedback setting. For more information on specific effect types found here, what they do, and what the parameter abbreviations mean, take a look at Xphraze's printed documentation. Most of the effect types are common and perform in the same way as they would in other applications, except that here they are part of the patch configuration and as such will only affect this patch. As a final note on effects, if you want to apply an effect on all patches at once, the Master Effects section in the Advanced page will give you this opportunity. For more information on Master Effect, check out Advanced Features in Chapter 9.